Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I was live and I was going live. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't have a camera. So instead of having a camera, tonight I'm going to do my very best to share my screen here, and we are going to code a select all method here on system.debug. So thanks for anybody who is joining me, which at this point actually is nobody, and that's okay. All right, so the very first thing that we're going to do here is actually create a class for this. Just this way, if we have a class, we can actually call it later on. So let's go ahead and I don't know why I chose open. I actually have to create a brand new one. All right, so let's just call this our select all class. All right. In our select all class, we're going to go ahead and just create a public selector here. All right, so public select all class. Actually, I don't even think we actually need a constructor for this, simply because the only thing that we're going to be doing in this is returning our actual method for creating our select all. So just to kind of give you guys a little like background with Salesforce and Sockwell/SQL in general. With Sockwell, you don't actually have the same abilities to select all of the data from every single field in your database on a table like you would with something like SQL, which Sockwell is very, very syntactically similar to. Okay, so in order to get around that, and by the way, the reason for that simply is just purely because of limits. And so the way that we kind of get around that is simply by utilizing some of the tools inside of Salesforce in order to get all of the fields from an object that we're looking at. Typically, you wouldn't do this. It kind of takes a lot of effort and sort of the resources in order to get it all, which is why they don't want us to do this to begin with. But occasionally people want to get around with it anyway. And honestly, as far as like teaching new developers on Salesforce, people who are getting into Apex and things like that, it's sort of a nice way to learn how to build out the actual query structure, right? Like getting to know the global describe and how all of those things kind of work together allows for that. So we're going to try to tackle some of that global describe stuff. We're going to talk some about some of that stuff and try to build out our own select all method inside of the select all class in the meantime. Okay, sound good? Perfect. All right, so first let's go ahead and actually create a method for this. We're going to call this get, I mean, you'd like to call it select all, so I guess we could just call it select all. And since our plan is to return a list of S objects whenever we call this method, we're going to go ahead and return that right now as well. So select all, and we have to think about some of the kind of parameters that we're going to need inside of this in order to get it to sort of pop off. Missing return statement, right on. And my guess is that the only thing that we really need at this time is probably our actual S object name, right? So for that, we might as well just go with a string as an actual S object. So we'll call that string object API name. And for this, we're just going to actually end up just kind of like doing a global describe. Now, to do that, it's actually as simple as Googling it. I pretty much do it every single time. Global describe Salesforce. It's kind of the first thing, and it'll get you into the schema class. Now, the schema class is very powerful, like very powerful. And I don't know if anybody else is having problems with this, where it's actually like cutting out on them, but it looks like it is to me. So the first thing that we're going to end up doing is utilizing this get global describe, and we're going to pass it our object name. And then after that, we're going to do a get describe on that in order to get a, oh my gosh, you can't see it, but my headphones are falling off. we're going to go ahead and we're going to get all of the different fields and put those together in order to build out our query. So the first thing that we actually have to do here, though, is do the actual global describe. So for any of the times that you're actually going into the developer guide for Salesforce, for the Apex developer guide, they always give really good examples and allow you to kind of copy their code. If you don't have Flash enabled, you're not going to be able to just like copy the code, but you can open up just like the script context and it'll give it to you. So now let's go ahead. Let's go back to our developer console here, and we're going to go create that right now. And let's put that on one line. It makes it a lot easier to test for later, if you know what I mean. All right. So now that we've got this, let's go ahead and get our actual object. So first thing I'm going to do is actually like reach right back out there and get the commands that I'm going to actually need for this. So the first thing that, once again, we are going to do is we're going to get this global describe. And then after that, we need to actually describe the object that we're looking for. So in order to do that, we're going to go to, and really, when I'm thinking about this, there might be no real reason to kind of like keep this here, except for the fact that sometimes chaining can result in like a null error. And what chaining is that is kind of like what you're about to see. But basically, what would happen is that we change the uh, map of a string S object type to a string of an S object field, and instead of us just doing the schema right off the bat sort of thing, we're going to go ahead and uh, get our object as well as all of our fields and our field map. Okay, so for those of you who haven't actually followed like the 6-minute Salesforce stuff that RJ has done in the past, he's gone over some of the uh, map and set and list objects, I believe, to kind of explain what those will do for you. But in this case, a map is just a string, which is a key, and our value. So anytime you're actually trying to get the uh, or pull something out of your map, some like random piece of data, you're going to access it via its key. And in our instance, what we're doing is we're mapping a string to a field set of data, right? And I don't mean like field set. I was trying to like create that like hard pause for you, but it's the metadata for every single one of the fields on the S object that you're getting access to via that get global describe. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to actually loop over every single one of our fields in this map and get the name of it to actually create our query string. But before we do that, we need to create a place to actually hold that query string. So let's go ahead and create a string here, and we're going to call it query string. And we're going to make it equal to select. I don't know why I didn't put that in quotes. All right, it's my first day. You'll have to forgive me. All right, so we've got our select. Now, the very next thing that we're going to actually want to do is loop over all of our schema or our field values in order to extract just what their API names are. So to do that, we need to actually loop over our set of keys in our map. All right. So to do that, we just kind of like get the keys outside of the map, and we should be able to sort of loop over them based on that. So for that, we're just going to do for string, and we'll do key in gd dot get, or is it just gd dot key set? I can't remember. Key set. And then if we wanted to, we should be able to actually print out our key if we ran this code all on its own. And I can actually show you real quick how we would run this. But first, we're going to actually need a return on it. So let's do this. Let's do key. And then in this method right here, we are going to return we actually need to do, let's just do null for right now. Just so that we can save this. The actual intent here is to change selected object to object API name to begin with. We are going to run this exact code right here in our debug Apex Anonymous. And for the sake of knowing what we're looking at, we know that we have standard accounts like, or standard objects like account. And so we can actually run through this right now and debug all of the keys for it to determine if this is actually the correct way of coding this or not. Within the Apex Anonymous, you can either choose to click open log now or don't click open log now. Either way, we want to open it. Okay, so we've got a unexpected token on line 1, column 4. So for that, line 1, column 4, that's purely going because of the map field. It's going to have a problem with that. So we've got, and then, all right, so something, let's delete that real quick. We'll come back to it. Let's just see if that actually works. So no, column 4, map of a string of a schema. All right, so, oh, of course, I forgot to actually hit the period right there so that we could do the get. That should actually clear that up. Okay, perfect. And as you can see, it actually opened up my automatic logs for me. So here we go, back to that again. We can actually paste our code back in. Hopefully we'll get our key out of this. And click on debug only, and it should give us awesome. So now we have every single field that exists inside of our account object being printed out for us right here. So now we actually know that we can utilize these inside of our select all. So let's go ahead and append those in here now and actually create our select. Okay, so for each of these, we're going to want to append to our query string the, oh, I should have looked at that. So for each of these, we actually just want that key. That's like the only thing we care about in all of this is that actual key. So for here, we're going to do query string plus equals key plus a comma. And actually, you know what? Let's do this a better way, okay? Because the way that we're doing it right here, inevitably, once we get to the very end of this, we're going to actually have to remove that comma, like with a substring or, to try to remove that before we do our from clause. So in order to get around that, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to create a list, okay? And you could do this with a set as well, but we already assumed that our keys in our map are a set, so we don't need to be so concerned about this. And so we don't actually have to convert it again later, which I don't need to bother explaining because we don't need to do it. So let's go ahead and create a new list of strings, and we're going to call it query fields. New list strings. And then now for each one of these query strings that comes, or each one of the keys that come across, rather than appending it to our actual query string, we are going to add it into our query fields. Okay, so we're going to say query fields dot add, and we're going to add the key to it. Now, once we're done with that, what's really cool about this is I have all this like really weirdly formatted. What's cool about this is that now that we have all of those actually in a list, we can just use a string join method, which is part of the string class inside of Salesforce, and it will actually allow us to place a comma between every single one of those fields before we actually append the whole thing to the query string, as it were. So let's go ahead and take our query string, and we're going to say query string plus equals string dot join, and the iterable object in this instance is going to be our query fields, and our separator is going to be a comma. Okay. And so now what we've done is, and we're going to also append a space and say from, and along with this, we're going to append and concatenate, as developers like to call it, a API name for our object. So we're going to say from, oh, actually, I don't know why I'm doing all of this here. I do apologize. I just realized that we're inside of this. But nonetheless, while we're here, might as well do it anyway, right? We'll get rid of this. Make sure that we're actually getting what we want it to do. And we'll say from account. And then let's go ahead and print this query string out for ourselves. And we'll go ahead and execute that. Now, hopefully, and I should have probably removed every single key that we're printing out, my guess, unless I did that, which I did. Okay, cool. So now what we can see is that we've actually generated this select statement that has been truncated, where it's actually concatenating all of our different fields. And this has either been truncated or it actually hit the string limit, which I don't think it did, but it's always a possibility, I guess. So let's go ahead, let's copy this code again. And we're gonna go back to our select all class and close this out here. And we can actually replace everything with that stuff. And then the next step would be to actually, so equals blah, blah, blah. And we're going to join it on that once again. And then we're going to say query string plus equals. We're going to put a big empty space in there. And then we're going to say plus the object API name. And then after that, it's just a matter of actually querying for the data. So why don't we go ahead and say return a list of system dot oh no, I'm sorry, I don't even know why I said system. That's why I was getting all confused all of a sudden. So it's database.query will actually allow us to run this database as a, or this query as a string against our database, and we're just going to pass it our query string. And then we'll save that. Now, in theory, the goal would be to actually call this select all method, pass it an object API name, and it should return us all the results for all the fields of that object. And we can test that once again by going to our debug execute anonymous. And actually, if I had made this instead of public, if I'd made this public static, that should save. Now I don't even actually have to like instantiate this class. I can make a call to this class without instantiating it, which kind of makes it a little bit easier. So now let's go in here and we are going to system.debug select all class dot select all, and we know that it's going to accept a string. So let's go ahead and send it an account and see what we get back, if anything. Unexpected token, end of file. Line 13, column 1. Line 13, column 1. Why do you think that you reached an end of file? So you've got did I miss a semicolon? Did I miss a semicolon? I'm not seeing where I missed a semicolon. What am I missing here? All right, so we've got unexpected end of file. Oh, it's not saved. Why didn't it save? Control S. You said you're saving. Did you save? Said you're saving. Did you not save? Line 13, column 1. Why do you think you're missing an file here? All right, I'm like open to suggestions to all of the nobodies watching right now. What is causing this to fail? Okay. That goes to that. That goes to that. That goes to that. Yeah, what am I missing here? Okay, let's go ahead. Let's try to debug this just a little bit. We're going to debug our query string here. And we're going to return this to a null for the time being, just to give it a go. And still run it through here anyway. Okay, so that passed. So it's something to do with a return, which is kind of weird. Waiting for the slowly here as we're loading our views content, as you can see. Okay, so we get all of this. Select. Oh man, is it really truncating it? I wonder if it's truncating it. Okay, so fun. Maybe we need to remove some of these fields as we go through it before we actually add to them. So let's say, So the first thing that we need to do is figure out kind of like what are some of the fields that we'd actually be interested in and which ones we wouldn't be interested in, right? So to do that, we can kind of say we can look at our actual describe field result class here inside of the documentation for Salesforce and determine if it's even anything we want, right? Whether or not the field is accessible, whether or not it's filterable. Let's go with that. I kind of like that. That's a good way to start. Let's just say if it's filterable. So to do that, we're going to go right in here and we're going to say if, where are we? GD dot get, and we're going to put our field in, or our key in here, just to get the actual data for that. Dot, bam, is filterable. Bring this down here now. And that should actually, what? All right, hold on. We're going to work through this, guys. Don't leave me. Don't leave me hanging here. We got this. Oh, duh. See, there's my problem. There's my problem. This is what we need to do. We need to do a describe field result on this. That's what I did wrong. So we're going to do DFR equals get describe. Now I'm thinking this should work. And then here, I should just be able to put DFR. Does that work? No, that does not work. Why does that not work? S object field. Oh, I spelled that wrong. That would probably be a thing. Yeah, see, that's a thing. I told you that was a thing. Nobody ever believes me when things are things. Okay, so now, see if we get any difference in this. No, no difference. The only thing I can possibly think is actually happening at this point is that string is too long. Why else would it have a problem with querying this? All right, so we're going to just keep digging. Just a little bit more. We're going to actually try our best to get rid of a whole bunch of these extra little things for ourselves. Is accessible is a good one. Let's go with is updatable. Hopefully that'll give us a little bit, like all I'm looking for is just enough to get this off the ground. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. All right, let's put this up in here. Okay, so now if and dfr dot is updatable query field that add. By the way, anybody who's wondering, completely off the cuff here. I have no preparation for this, but I'm still trying to do this for you. All right, that's still not working. Why is it still not working? Oh, oh. Guys, why are you doing this to me? None of you helped me with this. All I was asking for was a little help. Nobody was like, did you forget the from tag? Of course they didn't. All right, so we forgot the from tag. That's okay. We still successfully got all of our data. Okay, so to be clear about my little mistake here and what went wrong, I was originally just doing everything. So it was like select all the fields. And then as part of that, I was just kind of like tossing in the API name of our object, which in this case was account when we look at it from what I was trying to call. And I wasn't actually telling it that the account was the object. So I had no like from clause. So the way a standard like SQL query or any like query in general is structured is that you have your select statement, you have your comma separated list of fields, right? So your ID, comma, name, comma, current or annual revenue or something like that. And then what you do is you have your from clause, and your from is going to actually tell it like what object to pull that data from. And then after that, you have your where clause, and your where clause is going to have everything where you're actually filtering by these types of things. And then your order by followed by your limit. Okay, so order by is just ascending, descending, and which field, and then the limit is just to return a specific set of or limited number of records in that actual query. In this instance, this worked for us. We just forgot our from and then added a bunch of crap we didn't actually need. So just to kind of like show this again real quick, we can actually try this against a different object now. So that was our account object. Let's go ahead and now let's try to do our select all from leads. Oh, come on. No such column type on entity. Why are you looking for type? All right, we're going to stop that now because it worked with account. Let's go back to how magical it worked with accounts. Should we try it with opportunity and see how bad we did with that one? Opportunity. Okay, I got that spelled right. Yeah, so accounts worked. We're going to stick with that one. Accounts worked flawlessly. Actually, I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that if I just did instead of the add key, let's try if I do dfr dot get name, which is different than get label. So get name should get the API name. Get label would actually get the label of it. But I still want to see what would happen. Oh no, okay, so it's still looking at it. I'd have to look at the actual logs. I wonder what's going on there. Oh. So we'd actually, okay, so they're going to end up getting like a whole bunch of craziness here when it comes to specifics of types of this. The point is that you could actually make these kind of work for you. Salesforce has its limits for a reason, but this is still a really good opportunity and exercise to get new developers to understand the way that dynamic programming happens inside of the Apex framework for Salesforce, right? Like the actual Apex language inside of Salesforce. This is a great opportunity to understand sort of how you can make things much more dynamic. Once you get into companies like ISVs, or if you're even working with a consultancy who does a lot of overlapping work where you put a lot of the same components inside of clients' orgs in order to make their product stronger or their org more efficient, you're going to end up needing to learn how to do the dynamics of programming in order to speed along your job. So this is a really good kind of exercise for that. With that, I really don't have anything else. I just wanted to share the select all functionality to a degree with you all inside of Salesforce. I hope this was somewhat educational, and I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm going to figure out how to shut this off now.